What is up, everyone? It is Saturday, June 18th, 2022. Just making sure I had the day right. And it is 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And wherever you are, however you are listening, watching this, welcome. Welcome back to another family education and support group hosted by myself, Param Nimatola. And I'm looking forward to this one. For the ones who've been watching these shows for a while now, this one might be a little bit below your level of understanding and where you are in your recovery process right now. So I need you to practice a little bit of patience and compassion when it comes to the content of this talk. The primary reason I'm making it is because, I have a great following here of people that are watching this every single week and they're getting a lot out of it. But there's a untapped group of individuals who have not been exposed to specific type of information. And I want to be able to provide information that also touches, moves, and inspires those who might not have any experience with this stuff. So good morning, Jim. Good morning, Debbie. And good morning in advance to everyone else that's going to come and say good morning. So let me do a quick introduction of myself. My name is Param. I am the weekly host of this show, the Family Education Support Group. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I am a licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor. And on a personal level, I am in personal recovery. My sobriety date is June 13th of 2008. So this past Monday, which was June 13th, was actually 14 years since beginning this process. So it's safe to say, well, at least I hope it's safe to say, that I have the personal and professional platform to be able to provide some information that can provide some support. And Cataline, yes, it is a beginner's course, but I'll tell you where the ideology of this was. So many of you have told me, hey, let's get this information out. Let's get this this family education out to more people. We see you do such a good job here, but there's not that many people, being exposed to it. So one thing that we did at Buckeye Recovery Network was we went and we hired a marketing company that's going to assist myself and help our company in providing this information, in being able to repurpose this information and getting it in front of as much people as possible. So how are we going to do that? And the suggestion of them is what I'm doing today, was they identified the top 10 most frequently asked questions that people use Google for when it comes to drug treatment. Okay, so the top 10, I mean, there's ways that you can get all the information. There's data out there. So they were able to give me the 10 top questions that people are going on Google and searching and trying to find out the information for. So what I want to do is provide some answers from my perspective, and not just like stuff you can go online and read and all that kind of stuff. You know me, I'm going to make it my own version. I have no notes. It's just off the top of my head, going to do it my best and speak from the heart. And we go from there. So all that being said, I'm going to put the questions on one by one. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to talk on the question. And then anybody that's watching this, if you have any feedback, insights, personal experiences, any types of words of wisdom, any type of knowledge that you want to also share, after I'm done, I'll utilize your information also. So without further ado, let me put the first one up. So the first question we have here is, what is drug treatment? Okay, so what is drug treatment? I can just imagine a mom or a dad or a loved one or spouse going online, going on Google and searching what is drug treatment. They have no idea, right, what it entails and what the purpose of it is for. So I'm going to answer this question. So what is drug treatment? Drug treatment, in my opinion, is when an individual has been unable to stop using substances despite of negative consequences. It is a bell, a ring, something signs that says, hey, you might need some help for this. Now, drug treatment can happen in a variety of different settings. Drug treatment can happen just talking initially to your primary care physician. Drug treatment can happen in outpatient settings. Drug treatment can happen in detox settings, in hospital settings. It can happen in inpatient settings. Drug treatment is something that's needed It's a setting that's needed to halt or discontinue the use of a substance when the individual is unable to do so themselves. And how do we know if they're unable to do so themselves? Is just watch the history. Did they say, I want to stop, but couldn't? Did they have reasons to stop, but they couldn't? Did they have promises to stop, but they couldn't? If the answer is yes, 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 this individual is a prime candidate for drug treatment. And when it goes to drug treatment, what I want you to know is there's various avenues to look at this. One is treatment for discontinuing the drug. The second is the reasons why the person's using drugs in the first place. These are completely two different paths and avenues. So drug treatment is a setting. It's either formal or informal that an individual who is struggling with the ability to stop using drugs and alcohol despite of negative consequences needs to go to in order to provide some relief and to discontinue that process. Sometimes drug treatment can be voluntary. Sometimes drug treatment could be a nudge from the judge and it could be court ordered. I don't care what type of it is, but the whole purpose of it is to discontinue the use of a drug. Let's see what we got over here. Let's see. Martha, interesting that applies to those who are not substance abusers, but who are similarly unable to change self-sabotaging behavior. Yes. So Martha, good insight on that. I value that feedback right there. I believe that a lot of behaviors of choice also follow the same addiction kind of loop inside the mind of the human being. So we can be addicted to self-sabotaging behavior. There's actually a thing out there called chaos theory, addiction to chaos. People's brains get addicted, wired to chaos. So what happens is whenever things get calm, they find ways to self-sabotage and blow it up because they're looking for the payoff that comes with the chaos. So, but absolutely, I agree with you there. And if anybody has any feedback like that, feel free to drop some comments. I'll give some insight back to it. And so let's get to the next question that I have here. And some of these obviously are very basic. You know, you've been watching me talk long enough. You know that I kind of, I don't do things too basic, but sometimes it's okay to keep it simple. So what is a drug treatment center? A drug treatment center is a facility or a place in which there are multidisciplinary strategies and multidisciplinary approaches to looking at a human being from a macro level. So what does that mean? At a drug treatment center, there needs to be clinicians who can do assessments. There needs to be assessments that are comprehensive. They're biological, psychological, social, spiritual, legal, that all encompass the human being. In a drug treatment center, there needs to be various different modalities of interventions because not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody identifies the same way. Not everybody experiences life the same way. In a drug treatment center, there needs to be collaboration, active collaboration with the different multidisciplinaries. So if there's a medical director involved, needs to be communicating with the therapist. If the therapists are involved, they need to be communicating with the counselors, and the counselors need to be communicating with the medical director. And it needs to be a cohesive unit with the sole intention of allowing human beings to gain the tools, the coping skills needed to be able to not only discontinue their drug use, but to be able to maintain that discontinuation afterwards. And that's a whole different conversation which we're going to talk about here. So a drug treatment center, like I said, it's multidisciplinary, meaning that there's different people, different roles. For example, at Buckeye Recovery Network, full-time staff, there's clinical directors, clinical supervisors, medical directors, counselors, primary counselors, therapists, client care coordinators, support staff. All of these individuals are needed to be able to facilitate the transformation process of the human being. Okay. See, we got some comments here. Yeah, and that's a good one, Jim. Reconditioning of automatic thinking and behavior. So that's what, I mean, so when we're talking about what is drug treatment, what is a drug treatment center, one of the goals of that facility is to be able to assist human beings and allow them to recondition their automatic thinking and behaviors. So Jim, as you all know, is a counselor at Buckeye Recovery Network, 6 years, my teammate. And this is something that we do. And here's the thing. Can you recondition someone's thinking, automatic thinking and behaviors in a 30, 60, 90-day time period? Man, my hats are off to you if you could do that. But can you actually put them on the path to be able to identify and continue doing it on their own down the line? Absolutely. You'd be surprised how much you could change somebody's internal thought processes and the way they're able to have insight and awareness and be able to catch themselves before they fall back into old patterns in that time frame. But a year down the line, 2 years down the line, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the practical application of all this stuff works, right? That's where you need to take what you got in treatment and then apply it on your own. And that's a challenging task for people. And we'll talk about that in a little bit over here. But good insight, good feedback right there, Jim. So the next one that I have here, and again, so if you're wondering what these questions are, so I'll put the little ticker on. It says drug and alcohol treatment frequently asked questions. So based on Google, and you can go get the analytics from Google, the top 10 questions that people search when they're looking for information about addiction and recovery and treatment are the ones I'm going over today. So some of these wouldn't be necessarily my like go-to, but you know what? If people are searching for these and I can create little short videos that can give that information to somebody in an accurate way, in an honest way, then they might actually find a solution for something they're looking for. Right? It doesn't always have to be what is it that I want to do. It has to be maybe what somebody else needs in this moment. So this next one I think is important. How to find a drug rehab center. Okay. There's no, secret, or it's not like a hidden thing that we have a lot of drug treatment centers saturated in California. Okay. But when you ask human beings about drug addiction treatment centers, they'll say there's barely that many out there. When you look at the whole country as on a macro level, per the amount of people who are dying and struggling with addictions, the numbers don't match up. And by the way, when they say there's 8 to 10 million people using illicit drugs and there's 25 million people addicted to alcohol, those are only the reported numbers. Think about what goes unreported, unrecognized, unnoticed. So how to find a drug rehab center. My thing is, the first and foremost is the most old school version of finding a service in life. A direct referral from somebody you care about, a friend, a family member, a loved one, a coworker. Someone says, when this happened to my loved one, this place saved their life. This place helped them out. This place, the people care. They value what they do. They're compassionate. They're loving. They're caring. They'll go the extra mile. If you can get that direct referral from a loved one or a family member who said, my family, we had a wonderful experience at this facility, man, that's as good as it gets. Now, if you've been hiding your addiction and the loved one's addiction in the dark, and you haven't been open with people, and you haven't been telling your friends and family and loved one that my loved one is struggling with addiction, that's a kind of a difficult thing to do because that conversation never comes up. There's a lot of shame when it comes to addiction that is untreated. I think that recovery, there's nothing shameful about it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful journey. And I hope that there's no shame in anybody watching this about the fact that you're in recovery. It's a beautiful thing because it's a new start to a new way of life that you never thought that you could imagine to have. So when it comes to how to find a drug rehab center, the other thing too is if you have insurance, you might want to go look and see what facilities near you are in network with your insurance treatment. Right? Because when they're in network, you might have a better opportunity to get better rates, lower deductibles, all that kind of stuff. If finances is one of the barriers to access to treatment. Now, can a facility be out of network and still be a good facility? Absolutely. Not every facility is in network with all different providers. For example, Buckeye Recovery Network, we're in network with 2 or 3 different providers. Our goal is to be in network with more, but it's a process to get there. And do we do good work when we're out of network? Absolutely. So, but the in-network option provides less barriers to access to treatment due to cost. Now, if you don't have private insurance or if you don't have HMOs and PPOs and all that kind of stuff, even the Medi-Cal route and the Medicaid route, there are treatment centers available. However, remember when I said people think there's so many treatment centers out there? Good luck trying to get a bed that's related to the county. Good luck trying to use your Medi-Cal to get some treatment. The waiting lists are months and months long. The availability is low. The quality of care sometimes is not there because these facilities are struggling to not only operate on a day-to-day basis, they're struggling to pay and retain good staff members. So how do you find a rehab? And also, there's something that stirs out there. People think like, oh, people can give, fake reviews and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, in any industry, people can, right? But go to a company's website and go to their Google page and go look at the reviews. And you are an adult. You are a human being. You're an adult. You're intelligent. You can read and see what's fake and what's not fake. You can look at the response by the facility or the owner. And just so you know, in full disclosure, that every single review that Buckeye Recovery Network gets, as one of the partners of the company, I am the one that goes and responds to each and every single one of them. And I kid you not, I know each and every single person there. At least I was a program participant. I know everything about them. It's not some random person I'm writing, to I know their story. I know their struggle. I know their journey. So look at some reviews, because that's what I get confidence when I try to pick places, is to go look and see what people are saying about it. And also the other one that I think is really important, and I really mean this, is go to their website, go to the website of a treatment facility, go under their staff page and do some research and see who works there. And also follow up with who works there full time, who has a career there, whose main job is it to be there? Because there are so many treatment centers in specific pockets that people go and they work, consulting or, independent contractor at like 10 different facilities. You want to make sure that the person that you see on that page is there every day, and look for certifications, look for licenses, look for accreditations. One thing that I'm proud of at Buckeye Recovery Network, we just secured our next 3 years of accreditation through CARF, which comes and it kind of certifies a treatment facility for alcohol and drugs for being the highest level of clinical competency, the highest level of operations. And you want to make sure they have these things. So look for treatment centers near you, look at their staff page, look at their reviews, call somebody and ask to speak to somebody that's a director role, somebody that's full-time there, someone that knows what they're talking about. And just like you would with anything else. When people want to get a car, for example, they go and what do? They do a little bit of research. They look at different models. They look at different trims. They compare some, and then they go make a conscious choice. But with treatment centers, because the emotions of the human being is so triggered, because the mom, the dad, the spouse, the children, they are so terrified by what is happening right now, they'll just say, please just help my loved one, not knowing that sometimes it might not be the right appropriate fit for themselves and their loved one. So let me see what we have. Some comments up here. Cataline, despite the available marketing and expensive advertising strategies, the best way to find one is by word of mouth, from friend to friend acquaintance. Thank you for validating what I said there, because I didn't know if I made sense or not. But I do believe that if someone had a good experience somewhere and they know the staff, they sat with the staff, they talked to them, they felt their passion, they felt their compassion, they felt their knowledge, they experienced it, it helped them out in life. I mean, what else do you need than that to believe that this place actually has good people doing good work? It is the most old school way, but it's so true and tried. So the next one I have here is, how much do drug rehab centers cost? So if this is, this is one of the most commonly searched questions on Google. I'll tell you this, there is a cost associated to drug and alcohol treatment. Okay. For many people, the only way that they're able to get into drug and alcohol treatment is through insurance, for many people, because the cost is so astronomical compared to the budget of a human being, for the most part, that it just doesn't make sense. It's a very difficult task to do for most people. Now, do we have people that don't use insurance and pay cash at Buckeye Recovery Network? Absolutely. But I'll tell you, that's the exception, not the rule. So drug and alcohol treatment, it varies, so there's different levels of care. Let me just break this down. Not all rehab is the same. The front end of rehab, which is like the acute, the detox, oftentimes there's medical interventions because it's life and death. The cost of daily detox treatment is much higher than the cost of outpatient drug and alcohol treatment 4 months later. Okay, so the level of severity, the level of acuity, the amount of professionals needed potentially doctors and medications, all that kind of stuff on the front end is very heavy. And is it covered by insurances? You want to call the facility and see if the insurance you have is covered. You want to look into your in-network, out-of-network, benefits, all that kind of stuff like that. The next question that happens here is the residential care. So again, residential care, which is inpatient, we'll talk about in a little bit, there's a cost to it. And then it's the IOP center, the intensive outpatient, there's a cost to it. And if you're wondering where all this cost comes from, right, you got to realize that these facilities are fully staffed with licensed clinicians, with licensed counselors, with buildings, with outside group facilitators that are coming in, ancillary services that are doing all this stuff to provide a therapeutic and safe environment, a space in which healing can occur. Now, that space, creating that space, if done right, is going to cost a lot of money. Thank God for insurance that allows people to access that when they otherwise couldn't. But that's the reason why there's so much cost to it, right? So, and always with all therapeutic modalities. So when you're working with a doctor, when you're working with a therapist, when you're working with a counselor, or you're working with a rehab, there is always options for sliding scales. Now, does that mean that you can just say, I can't afford it and give me the lowest price you got? No, just like everything else, there has to be some type of verification of income, of struggles, of finances, and all that kind of stuff. Because remember, who are these people that work in these treatment centers and rehabs? I'm telling you, for the most part, they're people that really care. They're people that really want to help. They're people that really are invested. It's like their passion to be there. They want to help everybody they can help. So it's not like if you can't afford something, they're like, sorry, go figure it out somewhere else. Have a conversation. Ask for some help. See what you can do, right? And again, drug rehab centers, I want to separate something here. Drug rehab centers are not sober living. So when you're talking about sober livings, there's oftentimes a separate cost that's associated to that. There's a separate cost. Private insurance that you're using for your treatment should not go towards sober living. And again, can the sober living work with you if you're struggling financially? If you are not able to pay the full amount, can you ask for a sliding scale? Absolutely. And the worst that's going to happen is you're going to get a no. But for the most part, from my experience, when somebody has the desire and willingness to come to treatment and the full amount of money, something that they can't afford, people do tend to work with those individuals, right? Please don't forget that. And tell anybody, by the way, that thinks rehab's too expensive, all that kind of stuff like that, is to explore their insurance options, to talk to facilities and talk about discounted, prorated rates, sliding scales. People in treatment centers want to help, for the good ones at least. The next one I got here is, does alcohol and drug treatment work? Oh man, what a loaded question. Okay, so I know there's a lot of pessimism. I know there's a lot of kind of shade that gets thrown on drug and alcohol treatment, because when people say, does drug and alcohol treatment work? The main question they're asking is, if my loved one comes here, are they going to stop using drugs for the rest of their life? If that's the definition and the criteria of drug and alcohol treatment working, the answer is most likely not in all cases for the rest of the life ever. It's not what happens. Okay, I'm just going to be honest with you. When someone comes to drug and alcohol treatment, you want to know why they're there, for the same reason we started this conversation. Because in that current moment of their life, they are unable to stop using the drink or the drug despite of negative consequences. They have just overdosed. They just got arrested. Their family just gave them an ultimatum. They dropped out of school. They lost their job. Life is happening. Consequences are piling up because of their drug use. They come to treatment. Does treatment allow them to stop using their drug, to start abstaining from their drug? 100%, man, that works in that early stages. That's what it's for. It gets a person and it stops their cycle. It takes them out of their environment. It breaks the habits, breaks the patterns, and they stop. They discontinue the use with the support that's around them. Okay? So in that regards, drug and alcohol treatment absolutely works. Okay? It absolutely works for that. Now, for the next question, which is the part that everybody actually is truly asking, is not can they stop, can they stay stopped? Well, there is so many different factors that go into that. Why are they using in the first place? Why are they using in the first place? For example, if your loved one experienced serious loss, trauma, and abuse, for example, from the ages of 8 to 20 years old. And I just go with those numbers because those are ranges we see all the time, right? Serious trauma, serious abandonment, abuse, emotional, psychological, physical, sexual, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, all that kind of stuff. Do you understand, to that person who's experienced all that, that drug use is not the problem? To that person, the use of drugs and alcohol is the solution to their problem. It's the solution to their sadness. It's the solution to their depression. It's the solution to their low self-esteem. It's the solution to their pain. So now, does alcohol and drug treatment work? Well, we can take the solution away from that person, and now they're just a raw nerve that's sad, that's depressed, that's angry, that's fearful, that's scared. And now the real work starts, right? Now the real work starts is getting down to the roots and the why the individual needs to use painkillers, needs to numb out, needs to just disassociate from life. And if they don't get to the roots of all that, which, by the way, it's not the drug and alcohol treatment center's fault for not getting to that. Do you have any idea how many people are resistant to doing that deep work? You don't even have to go look at people that are addicted with drugs and alcohol. Regular people, just like you watching this, if you've never had a problem with addiction, the deep work in your life, the stuff to really go down and figure out why you are the way you are, why you feel the way you feel, why you do the things you do, why you act out the way you act out, not just now, but your whole damn life. To do that deep work, how many of you are just like, I can't wait to do it. Please sign me up. Most people don't want to look at that stuff, let alone an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid. But treatment exposes them to that. It opens it up to them. It brings it out for them. It allows them to get dysregulated so they can learn coping skills to self-regulate without the use of drugs and alcohol. So does it happen the first time? My hope, my pray for everyone is that the first time they go to drug and alcohol treatment, they get it. That's not the case. It's not statistics. It's not the norm. Does it happen the second time? I hope that it happens, and it happens for many people the second time. But guess what? I know somebody that's 10 years sober. It happened to them the 12th time. The 12th time it happened to them, that they finally realized that all of this work I've done in treatment was getting me ready to look at the deep stuff of why I was using in the first place, why I felt out of place, why I felt sad, why I felt like I was in pain, why I felt like nobody liked me, why I felt like my self-esteem was this low. Once they got into all that, the drug treatment works, right? So you can't force someone to be ready for that. You can't force someone to be ready for that. And the other thing too, here's when talking about does alcohol and drug treatment work, I want you to know this, that there's something called internal and external motivation, okay? External motivation is somebody who comes into drug and alcohol treatment, not for themselves or their own wishes or desires, but because someone else in life, usually someone they love or cared for, or sometimes someone that they resent and don't like the judge or the courts, told them that if you do not go to this drug and alcohol treatment, then X, Y, and Z is going to happen. So they come into treatment externally motivated to do something that they kind of don't want to do. The goal of alcohol and drug treatment is to move that person a little bit over day by day to go from being primarily externally motivated to being internally motivated, which means I am doing this for myself. I am going to alcohol and drug treatment for me, not because someone else wants me to do it, and I'm going to continue doing it for me. Does that happen the first time for everyone? No. I've been on the record. I just told you I celebrated 14 years of sobriety this past June 13th, 2008. The only reason I got clean and sober was for my mom, because I was tired of just watching her get like her demise. I was watching her just get older and sicker and just more tired. And I said, you know what? I don't care about myself. I really didn't. I was suicidal. But you know what? I cared enough about my mom to say I'm going to do it for her. And about 60, 90, I don't know, 6 months later, I'm like, hey, man, maybe I started this for my mom, but I'm doing this for me. I went from being externally to internally motivated. A lot of time parents come and say, hey, my kid just doesn't want it. What do you want me to do about it? You can't force somebody to become internally motivated. That's the whole point of internal motivation. It's something that happens from within. Now, can the family change the environment? Can the family tighten the screws a little bit? Can the family learn boundaries? Can the family learn healthy communication? Can the family learn how not to enable anymore? And by doing so, it allows the person to move towards internal motivation. Absolutely. But despite of doing all that, and they're still not internally motivated, at least you know you did your part. Just take care of yourself. So hopefully that was enough for does drug and alcohol treatment work? And yes, Jim, the seeds need to be planted. And so let me give that the seeds. So treatment is a lot of just planting seeds and watering it too. We just don't plant them. We also water it every single day, every single moment, every single conversation. We water these seeds. If you would have seen me this morning at 8:30, whatever the heck it is, talking to the program participants, I talked with like the most intensity and enthusiasm I think I've had in a long time. You want to know why? Because people like Jim and Tony over there and John, you know, all these people watching, they've been planting seeds. Man, I'm going to water the heck out of those things. And for some people, it turns into the most beautiful, you know, flower, plant, whatever you want to call it, garden you've ever seen. Kind of like this beautiful orchid from Trader Joe's. That was a little shameful plug. And for some, I'm watering that thing and they're just like, they have a cover on it. And the last thing they want to hear is me at 8 o'clock in the morning telling them that they're worth it. They can do anything they want to do in life. As long as they put down the drink and the drug, the world becomes their playground. They can transform into anything that they desire, and they just don't want to hear it. So let's see what Eileen said here. The deep work is the unexpected payoff for family members who participate in the recovery process. If their loved ones did not have the problem that brought family members into the circle of recovery, we would probably never have searched to the extent of our own growth. Absolutely, Eileen. Absolutely. Because when we go back and we talk about does drug and alcohol treatment work? That was the question, right? Does drug and alcohol treatment work? Maybe a better question would be like, for who? If your question is, does it only work for the person struggling with drugs and alcohol? Maybe, maybe not. Does it work for family members? Well, I know it's worked for the ones watching this and the ones that actually participate in the recovery process because it seems like something's working for them, right? And, you know, we talked about different ways of marketing and whether it's organic, natural. Eileen is not a paid actor, whatever you want to call it. This is a real life human being that's been engaged in the recovery process for at least a couple of years that I know of. And yeah, that's it, Tony. The best part of the job is to watch them grow, you know, watch those seeds grow. It really is. And Sandra, welcome, by the way. Good to see you again. Amen. She got shout out to Eileen. That's what she did. So let's get back over here with there's a few more. What to expect when you go to rehab? Okay, so that's a question that a lot of people have been searching on Google, I believe. What to expect when you go to rehab? Well, I'll tell you this, that there's only one thing that's going to change when you go to rehab, and that one thing is everything. So what does that mean? Well, life as you knew it prior to rehab must change. If it doesn't change, when you leave rehab, the life that you knew prior to rehab will come back around and bite you in the butt again. So when an individual says, I am going to rehab, they have to ask themselves this question. Well, they have to think about this statement and then ask themselves this question. The statement is this: your new life is going to cost you your old life. Are you willing to pay that price? Some people say yes, and some people say no. Some people are willing to let go and embrace a new opportunity and experience, and some people just cling on to the past. Why they do that, I don't know. I got out of the trying to figure it out business. I just got out of that business. There's no point. You just continue to deliver the same message consistently over a period of time. Some people take it, some people don't. The reason, I don't know why. But when you go to rehab, you got to expect that everything's going to change. Okay. And not just for the individual going, but for the family members too. Because why? Well, check it out. Your whole experience with your loved one prior to them going to rehab was about rescuing, saving, enabling, cleaning up, figuring out, lying, blah, 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 blah about their addiction. Now they're no longer drinking and using. All of that energy, all of that focus, all of that attention to whatever the heck you were doing, all of a sudden is no longer there. And guess what you're left with? Yourself. I've had so many family members that had like this role of the caretaker and the savior and all that kind of stuff. When their loved one went to rehab, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, what do I do now? We all know about the empty bird, empty nest syndrome when there's family members that their adult children go off to college and they're like, what do I do now? For the past 18 years of my life, I've had no identity besides being a parent to this kid, blah, blah, blah. And now the kid's gone and they're just like, they don't know what to do. Rehab's the same way. Your kid goes away and all of a sudden the pattern is broken. So when you go to rehab, you got to expect, and for the person going through it, this is what I suggest. Just know that you're about to experience a lot of stuff that's been suppressed and bottled down for a long period of time. The best analogy I have is this. Addiction is like driving a sports car or driving a hoopty or driving any kind of car you want it to be. Addiction is like driving a car as fast as you can down the highway. And as you're driving, so for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, however long you've been addicted, you're just accumulating a bunch of stuff inside this car. You're just throwing a bunch of crap, consequences, events, memories, stories, mostly negative, into this car, right? And all of a sudden you go to rehab. So what to expect when you go to rehab? You slam the brakes. And guess what happens? Everything that's inside of your car that's been suppressed and thrown in the back for years, all of a sudden flies to the front and covers up the window. And guess what? You can't see. You get overwhelmed. You get anxious. You get scared because you can't continue driving forward. You're just stuck. And some people, that feeling is so overwhelming. Do you want to know what they do? They just grab everything from the car, they throw it back, and they floor it again as fast as they could. When in reality, what you got to do in that moment is you grab one of these items just to give a little bit of clear way so you can see through the windshield, and you look at it. When did I throw this object in my car? When did I accumulate this? Why did I accumulate? How has this impacted my life? And you start to, through the therapeutic process of what happens inside rehabs, you start looking at it from different perspectives. Looking at it from different perspectives. And eventually the goal is to be able to make the item a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller, because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And eventually you throw that little item back in your car. You can't throw it out of the car. You want to know why? Because it happened. It's a part of your story. It's a part of your journey. It's a part of your life. It happened. You can't just throw away stuff. But you could change the size of it, the weight of it, and throw it back in the car and drive a little bit slower through that little opening from the window. And eventually you grab all these items one by one. You look at them from different perspectives. You make them smaller. You throw it in the car, and then you just don't floor it in the same direction. Make a soft little turn, find a new direction, and just drive the speed limit. Just drive the way you're supposed to drive. Just enjoy the journey. Look outside and just look at what you've been missing out when you were flooring it like a lunatic. Now, if you don't understand analogies, you have no idea what just happened there. But if you do, the whole point of that was to say what to expect when you go to rehab, that in the beginning, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Why? Because the solution to all of your problems, which was the drugs and alcohol, has gotten taken away. And until you find a new solution, it's going to be a rocky road. Hence why that's a very high risk time frame for people in the relapses. So how long do you, the next question here that people are searching on Google is, how long do you stay in rehab, right? So first we have to understand that rehab is not just one place. Rehab is multiple different settings and locations and purposes. So there is a detox setting of rehab, which is usually somewhere between 3 days up until 10 days, 14 days maximum is what you're probably going to be getting out of a detox setting. And that varies based on the drugs you've been using, the frequency you've been using, the duration of length of time you've been using, the amount you've been using. And that's usually under direct medical supervision, because there's a lot that can go wrong. People always talk about the dangers of the opiates and the dangers of, obviously the fentanyl, which is killing a lot of people, but also, for example, alcohol. Did you know that alcohol and benzodiazepines, which is those little friendly little helpers, the little Xanaxes, the little Valiums, the little Klonopins, those things that were so highly prescribed in this country. Did you know that those are the only 2 drugs that you can actually die from the withdrawal of them? Alcohol, the king of all drugs, the most legal one that you can just go to the store and buy as much as you want. You could die from the withdrawal of that thing. Xanax, Valium, Ativan, Klonopin. When your nerves are a little bit anxious and the doctor says, take some of this pill, you can actually die from the withdrawal of it. It leads to serious neurological, pretty much seizures is what happens at really high levels. And I've watched people that have very severe benzo addictions in the detox level in medical care seizure multiple times. And it's the scariest thing you'll ever see in your life. But that's the first stage. So the detox phase is short, highly medical, a lot of checking in, a lot of vitals, a lot of consultations with doctors. And then it goes into the inpatient, right? So this is something around, we've seen the Sandra Bullock movie, the 28 days, but this is something around 20, 21 days, hopefully 30 days if your insurance covers it, which they probably don't. But it's to be able to allow the person to, after their detox, to be able to see a little bit more, because what happens is the detox is foggy. You don't even know what's going on. You're under comfort medications usually that kind of keep you mellow. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, where am I? And this inpatient needs to be a safe, therapeutic, healing setting for the person to start to realize, okay, what do I want to do with my life? What do I need to do? What are my next steps? The families to get involved. How can we help? How can we support? What's our role in this process? And after the inpatient setting, not saying always, not for everyone, because some people might need to go back home. Some people might be with their family. Some people might need to resume a job. But then there's this thing called outpatient level of care, which outpatient means you're either living at home, like inside your family home, or a sober living if you're unable to live in a family home, and you're going to and from a facility that has all of those components we talked about earlier about what is drug treatment. And the goal of that is where the practical application of this happens, because as you're going outpatient, that means you're probably working, you're probably going to school, you're probably doing some stuff. When your emotions get dysregulated and can you not revert to drugs and alcohol? And when you watch people go 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, 150 days, 180 days without it, you're like, wow, it's sticking. And then after that, there's usually a fall off that happens. I suggest continued with individual therapy and check-ins. Continue to work on self. And while all this is happening, right, some type of outside support, whether that's 12 steps, whether that's church, whether it's athletics, whether it's little groups that are doing healthy activities and recreations together in a clean and sober way, you got to find something for support, because there's only one thing that changes when you get sober, and that one thing is everything. So the length of stay is never like a certain amount of days. Be wary of anybody that says it's going to take exactly this many days, because as soon as you assign a number of days to a person, you know what you did? You completely discredit that person's individuality. You completely discredit their journey and what it took to get there, and the various different dynamics, unique dynamic situations in their life that they're going through. No 2 human beings are the same. My friends, I say this all the time. No 2 thumbprints in the world are the same. There is 8 billion people out there, and we don't have matching thumbprints. So to think that through people that come from unique backgrounds and experiences and upbringings and cultures and just life would have the same treatment because they use the same drugs is just kind of, it's not a mature, rational thought. Okay. So these ones kind of, I already talked about how long is detox and rehab. Again, it varies on the drug. It varies on the amount used. It varies on the duration used, how long they've been using it, the frequency of it, the type of drug used. And so it varies. I'll say somewhere between 3 days and 14 days. And by the way, benzodiazepines, for example, the Xanax volume, Klonopin, or marijuana, they can actually stay in the bloodstream, like through urine. They can still be detected up to 60 days after. And some pot smokers, I've seen them be all the way up to like 75 days, 90 days after, because it's fat soluble. It stays in the fat and it releases slowly. And this, we're only talking about the physical detox, by the way. Let me talk about something. The physical detox is the easiest part of it. I swear it is. The emotional and psychological detox, oh my gosh. You know, some people say amphetamines, powerful ones like methamphetamines, take 18 months for the person's brain to fully recover. 18 months. 18 months. So don't give me this 30-day, the person should be okay now. You know, if somebody's been using drugs, by the way, for like 10, 15 years, and now they're 5 months sober or 4 months sober, if you think like they're supposed to be this highly motivated person, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You can't do that to the brain. You can't do that to the brain chemistry, the wiring. You can't go through all the events they go through with their self-esteem and how they feel about themselves, and 5 months later be like, I'm ready to take on the world. You got to let that brain recover. You got to let that mind recover. You got to let that body recover. You got to let that soul recover. Addiction's a dark experience, my friends. Addiction's a dark experience. It's hard to go from the depths of addiction to the heights of motivation just because you stop doing a drug. Okay. And there's two more here. The inpatient drug programs, like I said, you know, they're anywhere. They range between 21 days, 28 days, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. And that's really a controlled setting. Like, people are not coming and going. They're not working. They're not going to school. It's a controlled setting. Hopefully there's some family work involved, or at least introduced to that level of care. Because you've heard it before, addiction is a family disease. And what that means is, if you don't like that word, all it means is this, is if your loved one is struggling with addictions, you as the parent or the spouse or someone that cares also goes through the same type of trauma as the person addicted to drugs and alcohol goes through. I mean, how many times do I have to hear from a mom and dad that says, I haven't slept in years because I sleep with the phone on my chest, and every time it rings, I think it's the cops. You don't think that person needs treatment? That person needs help? You don't think a parent that's driven around, scary, sketchy neighborhoods to go take their loved one to a drug dealer's house to pay the drug dealer money so their child can get drugs so they can use because they're afraid of their kid getting sick or doing stupid stuff on their own? You don't think that mom or dad needs some care? You don't think that two parents that are getting into marital fights, potentially divorces over what's happening in their life, and they're yelling and screaming and they're losing themselves, you don't think they need love and support and treatment? Oh man, I'm telling you, everyone's involved. That's why it's called a family disease. And the last one, how long does outpatient drug rehab last? Again, be wary of anybody who says that it's like a 90-day program. If it is a 90-day program and your loved one still hasn't gotten what they gotten out of it, and you can't afford to pay more than 90 days, just say, hey, is there anything you can do to allow them to stay as long as you guys need them to stay? Most places will understand that. I know I do. Most places will understand that. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for treating drug and alcohol addiction, right? There is no one-size-fits-all. The goal of outpatient treatment is to allow the human being to gain access to tools needed to be able to self-regulate their emotions when they're escalated. Instead of using the drug, they use their tools in their toolbox that they learn through treatment. It's for them to be able to reintegrate into society and become a productive member of society. How long does that take? I don't know. There's no time frame on that. It allows them to get a job, learn how to budget their money, learn how to budget their time, learn how to create balance in their life. How long does that take? I don't know. Like, just the fact that there's timeline expectations to human transformation is something I'll never understand. You know, and I get it. People say, well, I can't afford this. I can't do this. I can't do that. I understand all of that. But just because it's time consuming or expensive doesn't mean that there needs to be a timeline associated to it. Now, are there certain benchmarks we can look for to say if this person is on track or not on track? Absolutely. And that's the point of a treatment plan. And that's the point of identifying what this person needs to work on and prioritizing stuff. So I'm not saying, hey, we just don't know. No, you can watch and observe and hear and feel and see people changing. But whatever image the family member has of what that change is supposed to look like, I'm telling you, you're going to set yourself up for some expectations and you're going to be disappointed. As William Shakespeare says, expectation is the root of all heartbreak. So I know this wasn't a normal Parham talk. And normally I wouldn't go over those basic questions like that. Let me see what comments. We got a lot of comments I haven't responded to. So Cataline said, for me, the most important part was not to take the whole staying sober all at once, but to remain open to it, to become teachable and to be kind to myself. I like how much you're talking about being kind to yourself. You know, your compassion is really getting better. And yeah, it's staying sober for the rest of my life is a very overwhelming statement. Doing anything for the rest of my life is a very overwhelming statement. Tony said addicts tend to live in the problem, not the solution. I'll take that one step further, Tony. Most people tend to live in the problem, not the solution. And that's not why this group of people is here, because you are here, because you're looking for the solution. I appreciate that. Jim said it may have taken the client a long time to get where they're at. It may take them a long time to get back. I say this every single week, every week, that we have to curve our expectations. If it took years for somebody to end up in a certain destination, I'm not saying you have to give them the exact same amount of years to get out of it, but give them some damn time. Give them some compassion. You know, stopping the use of drugs is a task in its own, is an accomplishment in its own. Sometimes that could just be good enough. Sometimes good enough is good enough. How about that? Recovery has 3 parts: mind, body, spirit. Yes, sir. Hey, soul, spirit, and soul. Put those things together. Always good to go back to the, there you go. Always good to go back to the beginning and answer why. Tony give a shout out to himself for his 14 years. I'm right behind you, bud. I don't think I'll catch up to you because you're ahead of me, but hey, we'll keep going. I see you're 14 and I'll raise you a 15. Let's get there. We all have different travel agents to get to the same destination. There you go. Much easier way than I say it. And one of you said, good morning and happy to see us. Okay. Well, my friends, thank you so much for your time, energy, effort today. Thank you for your patience. If this was a reminder class for you, cool. But if you know somebody that needs this information, please feel free to share this with anybody that you want, anybody that you need. And I will be back here same time, same place next week, and we'll go from there. So love and appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful weekend. See you next week.